It is 5 minutes after 1 and the gang's all here. So let's reconvene the meeting and we'll start with item number 7 and 8, which are both our executive director, Ms. Hill's portion. So Lisa, we'll just turn it over to you.
Yes, sir, thank you. I hear an echo somewhere.
Yes, sir. Now, how's that? Am I on? Okay. Return back from lunch. Well, we already covered personnel changes, but staff has been extremely busy of late. But I did, I did want to also mention that staff is about to begin. Actually, we already started it September 1 through August 3rd or October 31st. We've started working on the state employee charitable campaign this year, and because we've finally got a little bit more staff, we hope to be up in the top group of charitable agencies this year. So we're real excited about that. And I wanted to mention that Debbie White, who works in the enforcement department, I believe, and she can correct me if she's listening, I think this is her 7th year to put all this together for staff and to help with all of the things that have to take place to get it done. So the state of Texas has a really good group of employees, and we want to be part of those that are a little extra charitable this year. The other item I wanted to mention, I already got the job site postings done. Be sure and look at the website. I want to reiterate on that again because I am still looking for people, particularly an examiner and another field investigator. A big topic of discussion is our request for proposal is out for the public for computer-based testing. So that's a big leap in the right direction now that we had the authority, and now we have the request for proposal and it's out, and we're really excited about that. So we're ready to jump over that as soon as we get some proposals back so that we can move forward. The other item is continuing education. We have a new program for that too. And of course we have rules that were pending, and those rules will, hopefully we work out the rules in place at the same time we get our new program up in place. But it's going to be a good program, and it's going to allow people to go out and look at all of their history in one place. It's going to allow the providers to have different reporting capabilities and things like that. And for anyone that's listening out in the public, we did have an update on MedGas CE that went in on Sunday. However, it appears it broke something else in the CPE upload. So if you can hear me, we know about it. Bear with us, and the old system is tied together with baling wire and some duct tape. But when we transition to the new one, it's going to be exciting. I think everybody will really, really like it. The other big item that's coming up for staff is the transition for those that hold a plumbing inspector license that also hold a plumber license. The inspectors have traditionally renewed every January. Their renewal date, if they hold a plumbing license, will soon coincide with the renewal date of their plumber license. And we hope that everything that we've put in place will make that actually occur just prior to the next January renewal. And there'll be a big email blast that's going to go out to plumbing inspectors. In particular, we want to reach out to any inspectors that want to keep that inspector license but maybe haven't renewed it last year. If they think they're going to go back to work, we need to get everything in line for them. It's going to be their chance. And we'll also be starting on fingerprints for inspectors. And if you look at the website, there's a great link out there and a little guide on how to go out and do it. Anyone that wants to get ahead of the game, now's the time. We've got almost all of the tradesmen are done. Quite a few journeymen have already jumped on. We have everything in place to take on any type of license. You don't have to wait till we say, now it's your turn. But we do intend to go ahead and get the inspectors done by this January so that we can do the rollover and the fingerprint, and it's all the perfect world that we dream of. So we'll see how all that goes. Exciting anyway, to say the least. I also put some current statistics on licensees. We made a chart in there. You'll see it, it's the individuals, and you'll see the growth in that chart. If you're talking about just licenses, there's also a list of all the different license types and the number of those. In particular, speaking of inspectors, there's 1,588 right now. And so we've grown quite a bit. Workload is ever increasing. There's an explanation for the difference between the unduplicated, which are individuals, and then the actual number of licenses. And for the CPE people that are listening, all of these documents will be out on your CPE Google link after the board meeting. We'll get those out, so you'll have those. And the other item that we're going to put out on the website today is the easy read version of the law, and the way it now reads. And you'll be able to see what went away. It'll have strike throughs, and then everything that's new will be out in bold and red, and it'll clearly say that this is an easy read format. And if I get it all just right, actually Ames is going to help me get it all just right. We're going to get links on it, and you'll be able to tell all the things that's changed. And one easy thing that I can think of is the 24-hour training program for RMPs is no longer in the law. So you'll see the differences when you go out there and read it. And I know the CPE providers were excited about having that. And I want to mention to you, we continue to do a report that tells you about the number of examinations that we have pending. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's pretty big. There's 684 scheduled exams right now. This Friday, we're going to do a large group of 50. It says 49 on here, but they added a 50th person of written exams. One large group. We're going to do them in Waco. And it's pretty exciting. So let's say 45 of them pass. We'll have 45 more licensed plumbers by Friday evening, let's hope. It's no small feat to get all of those done at one time. But something I want to bring to everyone's attention, out of that 689, 27.5%, and this has gone up since the last time, are retakes. Those are people that came unprepared, failed the exam, and are having to come back for 2 or more times. So, and in particular, we've seen a little higher failure rate on the masters. And the grass is always greener on the other side, and there's lots of business, and everybody wants to jump up there and take that master exam. But the most important thing is to study before you get here. So, but we broke it down by type there.
Lisa, can I interject something here?
Yes, sir.
You know, one of the things that was made, we developed this large testing site in Waco with the cooperation of TSTC in an attempt to address the backlog of people to take the exam. I have been absolutely astounded of all the complaining we've had that they have to wait so long for the exam. We've only got 50 people that stepped up ready to take it. And we've got how many hundred people are in line, and we get a regular dose of complaints that I had to wait several months. Well, here it is. We don't have any capacity. It's there for the asking. in Waco, and we ended up with 50 people took us up on it. So I'm not complaining about it. I'm just surprised about it with the problem that we had of a backlog and the sense of urgency we felt to get that backlog down. Apparently we're the only ones that have any sense of urgency because we've made it available. We've got capacity to do 100 if we chose to. We've sent it out email blasts specific to those who've got their application and registration ready to go, and they still don't do it. So we're not, that doesn't mean we're going to stop. We're going to continue to do it and continue to offer it in mass numbers. And it's obviously, it's the written exam, basically for journeyman or masters. But just something that surprised me, and I thought we would fill up 100, and based upon the complaints of waiting time, I figured we'd fill up 100 the first time, and it just didn't happen. So,
and it's written masters, and I dare say, not necessarily in their defense, but to tag on to what I just said, in speaking with some of them, they said that's too soon. I'm just not ready. You need to be ready when the application comes in. Because as we move further and further into this, the waiting period will be very, very minimal. So you need to be ready. And the other thing that we really need some help on, I need everybody to work on this, is please send your application in complete. I can't tell you how many calls we all get every day. Well, I hadn't heard a thing from y'all. We're not going to call you if you send a partial application. We can't. You can see that 684 were complete, and it's a lot of work to review and qualify those people and get them processed and get them in a spot and prepare their exam. And if you don't send all of your information in, it goes over in the pending pile, pending. But I will say that if you're missing something, if you'll go into your online account and look underneath your supplemental documents, you'll see what you're missing. It tells you in there. And it'll have a big yellow highlight in there also.
Question.
Yes,
This
sir.
is Ben.
So along those lines, the individual who sends in their application, they're not notified that their application is incomplete. It's on them to go and look at where they are in the process and what they might need if it's still pending. Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure of.
at least I would say that if somebody is concerned that they haven't heard back, all they got to do is go to their account. It'll show it's deficient and what you got to do to fix it.
That's correct.
So I guess I'm partially responsible for this. I have complained to the staff for the last lots of years. We have held a lot of hands, and with 70,000 people to license, our staff is taxed to the max, and we just do not have the luxury of calling everybody back every time or notifying them, you have to do this or you have to cross this T. People have to take some accountability on that. It's them that are benefiting by taking the test and increasing their pay and coming up in the industry. So we're going to help to the extent that we can, but I've fussed at the staff for doing too much hand holding. I mean, you've got this select few of 10%, which it seems like we spend 90% of our time with 10% of the population. And we are just too pressed and have too much of a workload to do that. I would love to do it, but I just don't think we have the luxury right now of getting that done. So,
And one of the, I'm
let
sorry.
Justin make a comment here.
More of a question, or I guess two questions. So you mentioned, there's 687 people or 600 something that they got it right, that figured out how to turn in a complete application. How many were not complete that just kind of got put in that pending file? And then my other question is, if people are able to go online to their account and see that their stuff wasn't complete, is there maybe some way that we can automate just sending an email out that says your application is incomplete, you know, please check your account online to see what you're missing or something of that nature. Just to try and, I mean, I understand we don't have staff time to handle that, but I just wonder if there's something we can do to automate that to where it's a little more customer friendly.
That's a twofold answer. I can't tell you the exact number that are sitting there incomplete. And for a very long period of time, we would either mail back whatever format you used to contact us initially. We would email you and tell you what you needed, or we would put it in the mail and tell you what you needed. And we'd also put it up on your account as we moved forward in the last 6 years of having an online account. But it got to the point as the demand became more and more and more that doing the email, doing the letters, that was unfair for all the people that could just get moved through. And if I had a lot of staff, I would say, sure, we would continue to email them. But if they'll log into their account when they're expecting to hear from us, we put the application back inside of their account and they'll see it, and we highlight that it's incomplete and what they're missing. And that letter's in there and they can easily read it. And that's about as automated as we can get at this point. Otherwise, we're back to sending the email again. And once we move to the computer-based testing, they'll actually be scheduling themselves. So it'll eliminate that snag as well. So I hesitated to spend any other kind of automation on it, other than when we're trying to do these big groups of people, we do send out and say, hey, you know, we've got your stuff. Do you want to do this? And, you know, or you're ready. This group is eligible, time wise that have held it.
I think
Thanks.
Justin's point is well taken. If you have to enter a keystroke to say pending, why can it not simultaneously say?
Well,
But like Lisa's last part of that answer, we shouldn't be spending money on technology to do something when we're fixing to go to computer-based testing, and they'll be doing their own scheduling with another party, not us.
Mhm.
So I think it's an excellent point, but it's also an excellent point why we should delay doing that.
yeah, and that actually answers my question that when we move to the computer base, that issue won't be an issue anymore anyway. So that's all I really needed to hear. Thanks.
And I'd like to show you, in case you do see it through different, you will see it through different eyes, of course, but I'd like to show you exactly how one looks before you leave today, because you are interested in it. And sometimes when I get an outside view, somebody will say, oh, and we'll go, oh, okay, you know, maybe we can work out something. But we'll still be the ones that are approving the applications. But once we approve it, they'll get an email back, and that part will be automated, and it'll say, here's your number, and they have to have that number. And they need to not lose that email, because that number will be required to, whenever they go over to the third-party testing agency, to put in to actually schedule their exam. So
That's basically what I was looking
Yeah.
for. So,
Yeah.
Perfect.
yeah.
That email that goes out once their application is approved, what's the typical turn time from date of application received to processing and the email goes out?
Depending upon the type of exam, it's about 30 to 45 days. Depends on what you're taking, what the demand is at the time. These masters, this big group of masters we took every single application that we had here. The ones that walked the day that we did it, if they were sitting here approved and ready to be scheduled, and everything that came in, everything that was online, and I can't recall the total number, it was significant. And we sent out an email and said, hey, we've got a deal for you. It's on the 24th of September. And 50 is what we got back. So.
I'm going to ask you a question. I don't know if you'll have the answer. Number one, I think scheduling 684 tests within 30 or 45 days is remarkable. That is a huge number. And since I've spent some time with Annalisa back there to find out what it takes to actually schedule a test, I have a greater appreciation for the work that went into it. I went into this thinking, well, heck, all you got to do is schedule them a date. But there's a lot more to it than that. But my question is, if we've got 684 scheduled in the next 30 to 40 days, what does that leave us still outstanding that are unscheduled?
I can get that exact number and give it to you.
Okay, would you?
Yeah, off of one of the
I guess
reports.
I continue to be interested in what's our backlog.
Minimal right now. There's so many of them that are scheduled right now. But yeah, I can run that report easily.
I mean, at one time, a meeting or two ago, we had a 600 or 700 backlog. And if you're going to knock out 684 in 30 days, I'm hoping it's really going to be a small number.
Oh, there's probably that many more right now coming right in behind them. It never
Still
stops.
coming in.
I'm going to tell you, in paper mail, and we beg people, please don't send them in paper mail, because paper mail, and when I say 30 to 45 days, I'm talking about once we see it. Just because it arrives up here doesn't mean that exam gets it. It has to get the money gets verified through the comptroller. The mail room distributes it, prepares it, and puts it, over into the exam center, and it's a whole process. But on any given day, there's 40, 50, 60 apps for stuff
Coming in every day.
every day.
Well, I think what I'm hearing is it's not going to be as minimal number as I think it is.
No,
And the only relief we're going to get that's going to be really drastic is when we finally approve this computer-based testing.
Mhm.
And there's 40 location sites.
Yep.
And then our backlog is, our emphasis is going to have to move to the practical examination,
correct.
because that's where the backlog is going to be for sure. Then I anticipate once the computer-based testing starts, that backlog is going to pretty well be eliminated. I mean, there won't be any reason for anybody to wait when we got 40 testing sites. And
what-
eventually, for everybody's benefit, eventually, we already have in place 2 additional testing sites, identical to the one we have here in Austin, that are under construction as we speak. TSTC has committed $3 million for our benefit to build us out a testing center, one in Waco and one in Harlingen. So over the next year or two, our challenge is going to be finding enough examination staff to man those sites with the budget that we have. But you know what? We always come up with something, and we'll come up with something for that too. But I think it's a huge leap of faith on their part to make such a capital commitment and trusting that we're going to get the job done. And we will.
And
Lisa's always telling me, we'll come up with something.
And we anticipate that we'll be able to do an AM and a PM practical here. And it's, some of it's going to have to be grown as we test the test to see how it all falls out. But we know about how long it takes a person to do this particular section and that particular section. And it's going to be interesting to see how, if the computer-based testing, if sitting in front of the computer goes faster than paper. We don't know how to anticipate that just yet. So that's going to be kind of a learning curve. And what it'll end up being is you'll get that written portion done and then take your practical, and you'll have an open door to take it and schedule it just about any time you want to, really.
What Lisa's alluding to is the reason we're going to have an AM, PM possibly is right now, every written test is administered by the same people who give the practical test. So if you totally eliminate the written test portion of it and do computer-based testing, that frees up our testing staff theoretically to double the volume and to do 2 sessions a day rather than just 1. So as she says, we'll work into that. We need to recruit some volunteers to help us. We need to do a lot of things, but we're taking them one step at a time. And it's, trust me, it's coming together really good, I think. Not as fast as I would have liked and anticipated, but nothing ever is for me. So anyway, I'm real pleased with where we are, which way we're going, Lisa.
And we learned a lot in the last several years going to remote locations and going to Lubbock, going down to San Antonio and just seeing how people were doing remotely and what it took a staff to go to these remote places. And so that's going to give us an idea, even though we were doing the written, it gives us an idea of what it takes for us to be in these other locations too. So it's exciting.
Lisa, I just want to reiterate to those that are watching, the reason that you have complaints about the board not answering the phone or getting back to you fast enough, more than likely is because your paperwork is incomplete. And so you need to stay on top of all of the stuff that you send into us and make sure that if it's not complete, you get it complete. And there's no reason why you should be complaining about a test date if you haven't even checked to see that your paperwork is complete. Don't rely on the board to call you because it's your responsibility. So I just wanted to make that clear. When I see online in particular people complaining that they've been waiting 6 months to hear back from the board on when their test date is, there's a real good chance that your paperwork is incomplete. You need to follow up and be diligent and be responsible.
And I'll say it right here. If you have not heard from us and you believe you should have heard from us and you sent all your stuff in, call me, send me an email. I'll personally go look. I have no problem in that, because if you were delayed and you didn't get what you were supposed to get, I want to know why so that we can fix any bottleneck or snag. And it's not uncommon. I mean, we make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. You know, maybe something was on the back of a page and we didn't see it. It's better to not put stuff on the back of the page, but those kind of things. So it's all coming together though.
You know, I'm going to throw in something here off script. And I don't want any comment or reaction on this, but for those of you who remember the name Representative Chris Patty, he announced today that he will not be seeking re-election. So no comment, just go ahead.
I'm trying to follow that.
You don't have to follow it. Just
Let me see. I'm just looking for.
some people know exactly what I'm talking about. And I don't have any comment one way or the other about it, but just he announced today that he's not seeking re-election.
I'm at the end of my items, sir.
Good. I'm sorry, I was about to throw you off
Well,
track.
you did, but that's okay. I'm recovered.
I'm sorry. Are there any questions of Lisa before and Lisa, as you always know, if there's something that you intended to cover that you didn't cover at any time during the meeting going forward, just let us know and we'll cover it.
I do have one item, but it's on further down and I'll address it whenever we get to the a few of the other enforcement items.
Okay. Any questions of Lisa about testing or agency activity of any time? All right. I guess we're down to item number 9, board discussion of strategies for increasing the number of licensed plumbers in Texas, including reciprocity agreements, review of jurisdictions with substantially equivalent licensing requirements. I've recognized, and I've already gotten feedback, that there is some apprehension about reciprocity agreements in the industry. We are not today going to take any action to move forward with reciprocity agreements. But in order to even consider reciprocity agreements or other programs that are substantially equivalent to ours is going to require some discussion. And if you might recall, I asked Dave Yelovich at the last meeting to do a somewhat of a review of other states as best he could to determine which ones even should be considered possibilities for us to take a look at in the future. But I'm keenly aware, and I know Dave is too. He and I have talked about this. We're keenly aware of the downside of reciprocity agreements. And we know that it's not something that's totally embraced in the industry. But I will say this, if I had a plumbing company with 10, 20, 100 plumbers, and I saw an opportunity to put an ad in the Baton Rouge paper for journeyman plumbers to come to work in Texas, I consider that a huge advantage to Texas to be able to get them over here, get them licensed and go to work for me and expand my business. So I know there's some downsides also, but reciprocity agreements and recognition of other programs substantially equivalent can be a huge help to the plumbing industry in Texas, especially those businesses that want to grow their business. They want to expand what they're doing, and they're not doing it because of lack of personnel. So I think I'm looking at it from a source of personnel for the plumbing industry to expand and grow their businesses and meet the needs of it. But not to be concerned, we're not going to jump into anything. But in order to even look at it, we've got to start. And Dave, why don't you take it over? And
I appreciate the challenge. It was interesting. The whole, you just hit all the big topics. Is when talking to people about this topic of reciprocity, you know, the pluses, the minuses, they're all out there. And I became keenly aware of them. And I have the ability to travel around our state and to other states as well that surround our state within my job. And I get to talk to plumbers, other people. And so since our last meeting, I made this the topic of discussion whenever I go to a job site and talk to people. Then I also did a lot of research online, just seeing, you know, we thrown around some states, you know, hey, what about this state, that state, this state? And first we started with Texas and said, hey, you know, what do we do for licensing? And, you know, we've talked about, hey, you got to have a PhD in plumbing by the time you get through the Texas process. And, you know, is that good? Is that bad? We've weighed all that in some of our meetings. Then when you start looking at other states, you see that, well, we're not really far off in what we do. We're kind of online. The largest difference that I see is our practical exam that we have here. We probably have the most extensive practical exam that I could find. There are some that do some testing, maybe not just as much. Frank said, hey, is there a state that would be at the top of your list to, you know, shake hands and come up with some sort of agreement? And when I looked at a few, I said, Louisiana, our neighbor, actually has some very interesting things. They do have some practical that they have listed on their website that they're simple. They're not exactly like ours. They're very short, depending on what license you're going for. And then, but also their hours. I told Frank that you need a PhD in plumbing in Louisiana as well, because it's start off with 4,000 hours and then it's 8,000 hours, and we're talking very similar. And you know, so the question was, what is substantially equivalent to what we do? And I said, well, I thought the practical would be the stumbling block, because Lisa does have a very good spreadsheet that I used to start my search with. And I appreciated this because she had this thing about a practical. And if you go down that column, there's a lot of no's in that column. And I said, well, man, how are we going to be substantially? But when you get to look, there are a few. And since this was printed, Louisiana added some of those to their exams, which was kind of interesting. So that's how I came to the conclusion that that might be a good place to start. If you look at our geographic regions where our populations lie, the Louisiana border and the Oklahoma border, as you go west, it's a little more sparse. But those two borders have some interesting dynamics to them with lots of cities and things like that. And so Louisiana came about as an idea. So when we talk about substantially equivalent, what makes it that? And I know that's part of our discussion is, what is it? And I was going to ask staff, and I know Lisa hasn't, she's looking away. I said, I wanted to take this and maybe compare the states that are on here. Could we add a couple of columns or a few columns and just put in the things that they require for the license holders? How many hours of this, how many, some states give an option, it's this many years or this many hours, or there are some states, and Louisiana included, some states have test waiver possibilities, that if you have this license, when you go to a neighboring state, they'll waive the testing requirement if you have this. And that's kind of what a reciprocity agreement is kind of like a big test waiver thing, because you're still going to do your background check. You're still going to do your fingerprints. You're still going to do that. You're going to have to pay a fee, but it's getting down to that testing thing. So if I have my master's here, do I have to take this other test over there? And that's what, to me, reciprocity is. It's really taking care of that one step, because all the other stuff is going to stay the same. So when getting into this, as far as the discussion on reciprocity, who is equivalent, I wanted to see if we can get more information on our little chart here besides just the practical and the written, and maybe look at some of the other things. One of the other things I found was, the types of licenses and endorsements and registrations and this and that. And some states are extremely simple. I'm going, that's it? Wait, and then I'm flipping through their website trying to find more, and that's it. And we have lots of little niches within our law that we have. And so that might be something we also look at. But I basically went, tradesmen, journeyman, masters, went along that line. Hey, if we want to bring them in, and there are some states that are very similar to what we have as far as hours of this and training and such, so, and testing. So with that, I don't, if we want to weigh pros and cons or look at states in particular, like I said, Louisiana is the one that made sense. And when you look at it, they have a lot of stuff we have.
We've got a couple of options on this. She may not remember, but Julie and I talked about this back in February of this year. It's easier. We have got the authority to recognize somebody as being a substantially equivalent program and recognize their license. If we do a reciprocity agreement, it's a little bit more formal. And then number one, we've got to get the other state to agree to it. And number two, we've got to get the governor here to sign off on reciprocity agreements, as I understand it. Am I right about that? I think I'm right about that. I don't think we have the authority to enter into a reciprocity agreement with another state. I think that has to be done with the governor's signature. So it's going to be a little bit more cumbersome and timely. Lisa, explain to me, if I'm a master plumber, let's say I'm a journeyman plumber, and I've been working in Louisiana for 15 years, licensed as a journeyman, and I decided to move to Austin, and I want to be a plumber. What does one have to do who's got 15 years experience working in Louisiana as a licensed journeyman to become a plumber here in Austin?
Sign up to take the examination, and we'll recognize the fact that you've got plenty of time. I apologize. For someone to come from Louisiana to here, it's very simple. It's always been simple. They show that they have a license in good standing, that and they simply make an application. We sign them up. They take the exam. And something that I want to bring up about Louisiana, for example, and it's true for a lot of states, and there is a column, it may be hidden on that one. In Louisiana, they have a separate natural gas license. And so when they come to us, and we know that. And so we look to see if the individual has that separate natural gas license and their journeyman or master. And so we know when they have both licenses that they're equivalent. We just put them right in and let them take the exam, no problem. There is another provision where if an individual held a license 2 years, and a lot of states do this, and we've looked at it before. If they've held a license for 2 years in another state, that they come here and they take only the portion of the examination that has to do with our laws and rules. That way they know how to act when they come to Texas. They know that we require signs or whatever the case may be. And if they already hold a plumbing license in another state, and of course you should never assume anything, but you have to assume based on the examination that you can see that they did take, that they took an exam related to the code, which is true in most states. And in particular, another state that's really interesting, not to go on too far from your question, but another state that's really interesting is Utah. Utah has a bit more extensive practical than some other states, and their requirements are very similar to ours. So there are some that are out there, and there's some considerations that we could make. But in most cases, anybody that wants to come here, we recognize the fact that they've held a plumbing license. They can easily step in and take the examination. And if they've got 15 years, they won't have any trouble passing that.
And I guess that's the difference. If you had in place a reciprocity agreement, it would just cut out the examination. You just
That's true.
license them, they'd pay their money, go to work.
Mhm.
So the examination is it's a test waiver. Before we get too far, do any of the board members have any comments in general about reciprocity agreements or Justin?
I guess it's more of a question, just because I'm trying to wrap my head around this. The difference between reciprocity agreements versus unilaterally granting a test waiver. I guess the latter, is that something we can do if we know that Utah, for example, has a extremely similar test to ours? And we can say, okay, if you've already got a journeyman license in Utah, then all you've got to do is send us a copy of that with your check and you'll get a journeyman license in Texas. Or does that require more authorization than what we have currently?
It's my understanding, and this is something that's going to have to be vetted, but I believe that we have the authority to recognize other jurisdictions' requirements as being substantially equivalent as ours and waiving that test. I believe that we do that. I'll have to check.
The
Go ahead,
portion of the exam, as I mentioned earlier, we can recognize someone and test them only on the portion of the examination that has to do with our laws of our state. We could change that up.
Sure, and as we go to computer based, that's very easy to
Yeah,
do too.
and
And it'd be create some a short form exam for people that are bringing in another license, to where they just have to show that they know how to comply with the board rules here and all that. But that seems to me like that might be a more workable strategy than a true reciprocity agreement.
It would, but let me pose this to you. Let's say, for instance, that we entered into a reciprocity agreement with, say, Louisiana. That would mean that we could hire their plumbers and go to work in Texas. But those Texas plumbers that are living on the border couldn't cross the border and go to work in their state without a reciprocity agreement. True. So I wouldn't want to disadvantage borderline Texas plumbers where they can come in and take our jobs, but we can't go over there and compete for their jobs. So there's a downside to that I want to be super sensitive about. That in that respect, a reciprocity agreement is more attractive to me than just recognizing a license and letting them flood over the border and compete with our plumbers. And I know we want competition, but fair competition is where we are able to compete in their market and they compete in ours, back and forth. So, and I will tell you that I spoke with the executive director of the Louisiana Plumbing Board, I guess, what was it, March of last year or this year? They are open and receptive to reciprocity agreement. She didn't say no. She said, we had looked at it one time before. Ron?
Anyone know, and maybe no one does know, how does Louisiana treat a Texas plumber now coming in?
like we
That's fine.
I was muted.
Go
And to be. Can
Go
I-
ahead, Lisa.
I was just gonna, you ask how they treat us too. Their application, because they don't have as many plumbers there, is somewhat cumbersome process, but they do welcome a Texas plumber to come take their exam. And in particular, we have a plumber that's gonna go take the exam over there because we want to know firsthand. You can study it, you can talk to everybody. We wanted to go from start to end just to see. And so we're going to actually do that. And we're going to take both of their exams. But I was here when Louisiana came here and visited. Other people were here when Louisiana came here and visited. And our examination center and a lot of what they do is this modified to suit them. So they didn't take every bit of it, but they took a lot. So.
Well, I think it bears looking into, and you've already said that you've got someone that's going to go take the Louisiana exam. I would encourage you to reach out to them and ask someone to come take ours and see how they do on our exam.
Yeah.
Let's start a dialogue, at least with Louisiana. Dave, do you agree that that's a logical starting place?
Oh, wait, I guess I was going to recommend, I mean, we have cities already, I mean, Texarkana is right there up there. There are some cities already dealing with how, I'm a plumber and that border is kind of obscure and he goes back and forth and he's carrying 2 licenses. Or they know the ins and outs. And can we reach out to some license holders in some of these border cities and get their experience? Yes, I agree. Let's go take some tests and this and that. But the guys that have been living with this day in and day out, see how they feel and what they have learned by dealing with both processes.
You and I have talked about this in the past, and Lord knows you've been here long enough to know which states, in your opinion, are more closely aligned with our requirements and standards. I think one time you mentioned Colorado to me.
Colorado, Arkansas is going to be a real easy one. We talk to them a lot and they would love to be able to go back and forth. Oklahoma's probably not going to work, but Louisiana most definitely. So we can get that overlap border is what most people are interested in. There are a few other states. Arizona has a pretty extensive examination. And I mean, we in Hawaii.
Not
We
a
talked to
lot of back
Hawaii.
and
We have
forth
people
there.
from, believe it or not, we have people come from Hawaii to here. They got it reversed. I always tell them whenever they call, but
I'm gonna go there and check it out.
good volunteers.
Our next board meeting may have to be in Hawaii. Who knows?
You just give the word, Frank, and I'll
Hey.
fix you up.
You're not putting me on the end of that news. I got news.
Have them invited as their guests.
It doesn't make any difference what happens. We ain't going.
But, and to add one thing, the formal request will be to the governor and we'll make a agreement between state to state with all the particulars. And it does go to the governor's office and it does become a formal reciprocity agreement. It'll just be, your license is good here and ours is there. And which
Well, you say that, it's actually not. They have to apply and get a license in Texas and pay the fee
Yeah.
just like everyone else.
Yeah.
And have the insurance just like our.
Yeah. But it'll be a very simple process, but there is a lot of work and formality to do that, which we're not opposed to at all. But we welcome other states all the time, and God knows we got a lot of people from other states right now.
Well, I would, Lisa, let me ask you to do this. Get from Dave what information Dave has gleaned on these different states
Okay.
and reach out to those executive directors and of other states. See if they're open to discussion. We're not suggesting it. We just want to know, do you have any interest in discussing it with us? My guess is they would, but they may not. I don't know. And those that say, no, we don't have any interest in it, we scratch them off our list through a process of elimination. We know Louisiana is, so let's start a dialogue with them. But again, don't everybody hit the panic button. We're not fixing to sign any reciprocity agreements with 20 states. We're going to go into it extremely cautiously and careful. And again, keeping in mind, our primary number one function is protection of the public. And no one is to be licensed in Texas that doesn't have the standards that we require to protect the public. So if they don't, they won't be licensed, period. So we're not doing it just for a matter of expediency. But I think it could be a great opportunity for plumbing companies. Man, if we had a situation where they could recruit plumbers would flock where the work is.
And they actually there are companies that go across the nation, and that's why we do have an influx of people from across the nation. And for the most part, it's pretty easy to get them in here, and they come take that exam, and they do well. I mean, they're prepared, but we'll do some more work on it. We talked to a lot of states.
We'll do that. Get the information that Dave has obtained by talking around to different people, and reach out to those executive directors and find out which ones would like to dance and which one of them going to respectfully decline. And maybe at our next board meeting, tell us that you've talked to this one and this one, this one's really interested. We've eliminated this state because they were such and such. So maybe you could do a little, like you don't have anything to do.
I've got a lot of emails for a lot of people though, and I've got a way to do it. And I will say that I don't think Wisconsin's interested.
Okay. Dave, anything else before we move on? Thank you for doing, I know that's not an easy job. That's pretty broad and encompassing. So thank you for your work on that. Are we down to Richard and his financial reports? Okay. Where is Richard?
Right here, sir.
Ah, there you are.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
All right, Richard.
The fun
Richard.
part, the financial.
It's all yours,
section.
my man.
Thank you. On page 1, the first schedule shows our original fiscal year 2021 appropriation for the board, and then transfers in or out, plus
Hang
any
on.
additional revenues
Sir?
we've received.
Sir?
1 second.
I've got to put Richard back for the audience to hear.
Oh, okay.
1 second.
Would you like me to start over?
Okay. Try that.
Okay, should I start over?
Yes, please.
Okay, sure. On page 1, the first schedule shows our original fiscal year 2021 appropriation for the board, plus any transfers in or out, plus any additional revenues we received, and the estimated amount the board will end up spending in each strategy for fiscal year 2021, which just ended a few weeks ago. The last line in the first schedule shows the 5% budget reduction by state leadership that was due to the COVID pandemic. The second schedule shows estimated agency expenditures by category for fiscal year 2021. We spent just about all of our funding, with the exception of the conference and seminar funds, that $23,000, which we can roll over into fiscal year 2022. So we don't lose that, we can just move that forward. On page 2, the board continues with strong collection of its revenues. Our license revenue has actually decreased a bit, as we actually anticipated, mainly due to the reduction in our responsible master plumber fee from $420 to $300. Our examination application revenues for fiscal year 2021 increased significantly by 28%. That's definitely a record. Our administrative penalties have also increased significantly this year due to some large penalties that having been collected by our enforcement department. Overall, we're just a little bit lower for fiscal year 2021 as compared to 2020. Once again, mainly due to the reduction of the responsible master plumber fee. A reminder that these revenues don't go to the plumbing board. They're actually deposited directly into the state's general fund. Page 3 shows the estimated number of license, registration, and examination fees received for fiscal year 2021 as compared to 2020. And then on page 4 is a revenue analysis by month for fiscal year 2021 as compared to the previous 5 years by month and also by year. As expected, we're a little less than last year, once again, due to the responsible master plumber fee reduction. We actually expected that reduction to be closer to about $500,000, but our fee collection has remained very stable and has actually increased in many of the license fees. Also wanted to mention the fiscal year 2022 budget items received. In Senate Bill 1, we received $5.67 million for these next 2 fiscal years, 22 and 23. And also 1 employee was added to bring us up to 39. In addition to that, House Bill 636 authorized 3 additional employees, bringing us up to 42 employees and increasing our budget by another roughly $300,000. And then also House Bill 2 granted us an additional $83,700 for one-time IT enhancements and also 2 replacement vehicles. So the total annual biennial budget received from House Bill 2 and 636 was $383,000 roughly, which brings our total budget from all of those 3 sources to a little over $6 million. It's never been near that high. So in short, we did quite well this past legislative session. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
You know, I think the significant thing, what did we ask for that we didn't get this time?
Everything we asked for, we received.
So we've eliminated our excuses, folks. Do what? That's what everyone says.
Exactly.
You know what? I think, and Lisa and I talked about this, we modified it upward when I got here. This LAR was done back in September before any of us were appointed. But even before I took office or took this position, Lisa and I went through it in December, and we did ratchet it up in certain areas. But I believe so many agencies ask for $1 million when all they want is $600,000. And I think they lose credibility with the legislature when they do that. So we asked for what we actually needed this year, and we got exactly what we asked for. And in next year, I intend to do the same thing. I don't like this game that's played over there. And over a period of time, I hope we'll gain some credibility that we'll actually use and spend wisely the funds that we asked for. So anyway, good year, good. I was panic stricken when I saw that revenue actually drop down below what we were last year and years past. And Richard reminded me first thing this morning, he says, don't forget, we cut fees by $1 million. And that's reflected in this. So, and I was about ready to fuss about us leaving $23,000 on the table. And Richard tells me we can carry it forward. So I don't have any complaints from a financial standpoint. We're all good to go, I think. So any questions of Richard before we? Thanks, Richard. As always, great job.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, let's move right into, are we Steve with enforcement? Steve, are you there?
There I am.
Okay,
Yes, thank
I
you.
think
Mr.
we've
Chairman.
got, Steve, let's do it this way on the, I guess the first item is cease and desist orders. We've got two, both of them have to do with unlicensed activity. So, right, Steve? Not a
Correct,
lot
yeah.
to say there.
Yes, so just Eduardo Arisa and Chevy Boren. Both were issued cease and desist orders.
Do any action, no action is necessary on the board. That's just for information.
No, sir, these were signed and administered through by the executive director. So they've all been sent, and that's all the action on that was just to report to the board.
Okay. Item B.
B is the board board
Mr.
order.
Chairman?
I'm sorry.
You go ahead.
Tab 8 is the board order, and these are the orders, the individuals that have been penalized throughout this period and in the quarter. And you'll note there's multiple pages. Now, this will require signature by the board chair. For the multiple penalties issued and payments received, total 8 pages. And at the end of the page 8, of course, is the signature page. Along with that, there's a repeat offender report on previous offenders. And you'll see there were 4, actually, there's just 2. I guess I got one duplicated. 2 repeat offenders on from the previous quarter. So that's all we have on the board order. And again, it will require signature by the chairman, and I think it's going to would have to get approval for the signature from the rest of the
Okay.
board.
Board members, the administrative penalties by agreement are under tab 8. They were included in your packet. If there are no questions concerning these individual cases, a motion would be in order to approve these agreed orders and authorize the chairman to sign the document.
Mr. Chairman, Justin McDonald, I make a motion to that effect. I do want to note that it has your title as executive director on the signature page.
Saw
we
that.
just zoom in that.
I don't know if that's a promotion, or does that mean I start getting paid?
Get a raise.
You'll have to take that up with Lisa and Richard.
Okay. Thank you. Have a motion to approve and authorize the chair to sign the document. Is there a second?
Ben Friedman, second. Question though, and when we get to discussion.
Go ahead. Sure. What's your question?
Without saying the gentleman's name, but the first repeat violator, what was his first violation and when was that?
There's asterisks on the board order. So it should be listed. See, of course, the previous one is the on the previous violator report. And then the second one was on page 4. 2021-01345.
I see. So the first violation was for 750. The second violation was for 2,500. Is that, am I seeing that right?
Correct.
Okay, good.
As it should be.
Absolutely.
Okay, we have any other further discussion about our agreements? Have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Thanks. Okay, Steve.
Okay, on motion for rehearing, tab 9. I've been asked to present the motion for rehearing. And I'll go ahead and just read this. At the July.
Steve, before you do that, the board members, this was not a part of your original packet, but somewhere in your paperwork that was distributed as a motion for rehearing that was filed late in this case. So now go ahead, Steve.
Okay. At the July 14th, 2021 board meeting, the board adopted the default final order in this case. On July 16th, 2021, 2 days after the board meeting, respondent's attorney reached out to board staff. Respondent's attorney explained that his client had accepted or at least intended to accept the settlement offer. Respondent's attorney believed that the settlement was lost in the mail. The staff would note that this episode occurred during the time period in which the board, when the board was long-standing PO box had changed due to its previous post office location closing. Respondent's attorney also thought he still had time based on the 20-day language in the default letter dated June 28th, 2021. Staff informed respondent's attorney that the default order had in fact already been adopted by the board, that the only option respondent had for relief was to submit a motion for rehearing for the board's consideration. Respondent, through his attorney, filed a motion for rehearing for the board's consideration and signed another settlement agreement. To resolve all issues related to this matter, staff would recommend that the board, and this is in two parts, and I'm going to stop after the first one because I think you'll have to be possibly need a motion for one to go to the other, but the first point is grant the motion for rehearing.
Steve, this is one that got added late in on the agenda, late in the process of developing the agenda. Quite frankly, I thought it was deficient and chose not to put it on the agenda. The attorney then got in. We didn't even have a motion for hearing filed by the respondent's attorney stating any reasonable cause to grant it. I still think it's marginal, but as Steve said, in order to, the respondent did agree to take the offer that we had offered prior to the default. So in order to accept that settlement, we need to set aside the default. And the next step will be the next item on the agenda, which is to approve the agreed order that staff has proposed.
I have a question. I don't know if it's germane now or germane on the next item, but is this particular respondent's first offense?
Let's handle that on the second item.
Okay.
That it is germane, but let's do it at the time of the agreed order. So it would be in order now if the board sees fit to make a motion to grant the motion for rehearing.
Ainsworth, so moved.
Motion to grant the motion for rehearing. Is there a second?
Justin seconds.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, as part of that motion, you all can make a motion to vacate the default judgment. So we just have one live order.
Okay, so moved. Is that consistent with what, Ron, you were agreeable with that?
Amend
Vacate
my
the-
motion to what Dana said.
That's how I understood it.
Okay. I will tell you, I am in favor of this. I suggest it, but I want to tell you that I feel that it's a marginal motion for rehearing. And if we didn't have the accompanying agreement to settle the case, it would require a lot more scrutiny and discussion on my part. So, because it's questionable to me whether this should be done. But with that being said, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Now, on the agreed order, the next portion of that, Steve, Justin has already asked, is this a first time offense or second time offense?
For us, it's a first time offense. We know of no other, but I don't know if I don't think we can get into any details. I'd have to defer to Vina on what we could discuss about any of the subject matter.
You know, I believe that everything we need to know is contained in the agreed order. I don't think we want to get into anything beyond what's before us today. I think you've answered the question. Justin, does that answer your question that it is a first offense? It's not a second.
Yes.
Staff has recommended the agreed order as it's written with a $1,000 penalty, which I think is too low. But I also agree to defer to staff's judgment. So a motion to approve this, if you see fit, is in order.
Ed Friedman motion. I'll motion.
Motion to approve the agreed order as proposed. Is there a second?
Milton second.
Discussion?
I'll just add, this is in my opinion, the situation. They're agreeing to it. Let's get rid of it.
That's why it's on the agenda. I
Thank you.
agree with you. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. And that should conclude my my enforcement report for this time. Unless you have any other questions.
Questions for Steve? We have tab number, item number 12. We have one course instructors submitted for approval. It's Milton Clyde Turner Jr. From Houston, first-time instructor. Win Career Education Incorporated is who he would be working for. Is there a motion to approve this instructor's application?
I'll motion Ben to approve the application.
Is there a second?
Ainsworth, second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I believe that takes us down to the proposed rules to be repealed. Let me make a comment, and someone spoke to me outside the meeting, a non-board member. And it's a little complex and difficult to keep up with what's going on and what's in effect and what's not in effect. For all of the public and for all the course instructors and everyone else, until such time as we formally adopt a rule and put it in place, we're still operating under the same rules that we had. There's been a lot of rules filed for publication. There's been a lot, here are some repeals that are being done to address some of the issues in House Bill 636. But until such time as we formally adopt these, we're still operating under the same rules that we always have. This is going to start falling into place really fast and be much clearer to you in the next 2 or 3 months when we get all these rules approved. Lisa gets her computer-based testing in place, our programming for CEs to coincide. It's going to start falling in place and make a lot of sense to you. And I understand how confusing it is at this point, because hell, it's confusing to me and I study it all the time. But I also am confident that it's all going to come into place, all going to come into place in the next 90 days. But in the meantime, the marching orders are the rules that are currently in place are the law of the land. And until such time as even if we propose them, it's not until we formally adopt them that those rules change. So I'm going to take these items, I think there's 6 or 7 of them, and I think I'm going to take them individually. And after each rule, I'm going to need a motion and a second. And number 14 is a proposed repeal of 22 Texas Administrative Code 365.2 relating to exemptions. Is there a motion for a proposed repeal? Repeal. Second?
Ainsworth, second.
Second. Item number 15.
A quick question, Mr. Chair, just so that I'm clear. So we are approving submitting these proposals to the register first?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. I have 30 days of comments.
Just wanted to be sure I have my process down.
Okay, you're right. This is the initial first step. Doesn't change anything other than publish it in the Texas Register, allow the public to comment on it. And I guess I don't know whether they get it or not, but I'm going to send them everything. So just send it all to them. Lisa, you had something?
This is to repeal these particular sections.
But we still have to post it in the register.
Right. But
Yeah, just to be clear that these particular sections are gonna go away because there's overlapping items, either that were existing in law or have been added to law. And I know it is somewhat confusing with all the other changes and proposals that we did, but just so everybody's clear, everything that is staying in place is not affected by these either at the moment. Good.
We went over all of this last meeting too.
I'm sorry?
We went over all of this last meeting in terms of what was duplicated and what we were going to.
To some degree, yeah. Mhm.
You know, Vina, are you on there?
Yes, sir.
What are you trying to tell me? She sent me a
Okay,
text here.
so the rules go into effect not exactly on the date that they're adopted, but 20 days after they're posted with the
Oh, good Lord.
Secretary of
Oh,
State.
down the road. Yeah, okay. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about here. It does have something to do once we get ready to adopt them. But for the process we're going through now for the appeal, this strictly is a proposal that's posted in the Texas Register. Once it finally comes back and we adopt those rules, then as Vina says, it's after we adopt it, 20 days after we go to the Secretary of State. So, okay, we have proposed to repeal number 14. Number 15 is proposed repeal. Did we not vote on it? Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you, Justin. Item number 15, proposed repeal of 22 Texas Administrative Code 365.4 relating to the issuance of a license, registration, or endorsement. Is there a motion for this proposed repeal?
Justin, so moved.
Second,
Milton, second.
all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Item number 16, proposed repeal of 22 Texas Administrative Code 365.6 relating to expiration of license, registration, or endorsement.
Ben Friedman, make a motion to repeal.
Second,
Justin, second.
Justin, second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item number 17, proposed repeal of 22 Texas Administrative Code 365.10 relating to the application for license, registration, or endorsement after revocation.
Ainsworth, so moved.
Milton, second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Item number 18, proposed repeal of 22 Texas Administrative Code 365.13 relating to licensing or registration of individuals in default on a guaranteed student loan or in arrears on child support payments. Is there a motion?
Ben Friedman.
Motion to repeal.
Second,
Justin, second.
all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Item number 19, proposed repeal of 22 Texas Administrative Code 365.16 relating to board approval of course providers for continuing professional education. Is there a motion? Is
Dave Yelovich, so moved.
there a second?
Milton, second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Just as a little side note on that one, if you recall, the board will no longer approve these. These will be going to executive director for approval. So that's why we're repealing this one. Item number 20, proposed repeal of 22 Texas Administrative Code 365.17 relating to board approval of course instructors for continuing professional education programs. Is there a motion?
Dave Yelovich, so moved.
Second, Ben Friedman.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Last but not least, item number 21, proposed repeal of 22 Texas Administrative Code 365.18 relating to publishers of course material for continued professional education programs. Is there a motion?
Milton, so moved.
Justin, second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? See there, I told you we'd get through. Thank you.
It's very
board
efficient,
members.
Mr. Chairman.
You know what? We are down now to one of my favorite parts, and that's the public comment. Dawn, I guess you have a list of those online as well as those in person who wish to make a comment.
No one has registered for online, but we can ask them to raise their hand in Zoom if they would like to make a public comment.
Anyone in person wishing to make a comment?
Yes, sir.
You know, those online, if you have a comment or a question, well, I guess a comment, we can have an open discussion or question. But if you have a comment you'd like to make, please indicate with your raised hand function, and Dawn will recognize you. And in the meantime, while you're thinking about that, you want to call on our first person to comment in person?
Yes, sir. We have Jason Bretnell.
Okay.
Johnny Curtin.
You always know Johnny's got something to say.
No. But I am Johnny Curtin. I am a provider. I also am retired from here at the State Plumbing Board. But just to come to you, I appreciate you guys taking your time to be here today, and certainly appreciate Mr. Denton doing the research and all that's involved here, and I really appreciate that. That's something that we've lacked a lot, is the chairman going out and finding out what's going on. But I also come with probably more questions than I have answers. And again, nothing's changed until you change it. But when you change it in midstream, it sure affects the guys that were swimming already. So that's where we have the problem, that we need some direction, we need some guidance. And as a provider, that's something that I would hope that we get notifications ahead of the plumbers, because we've had a couple of times this year that the plumbers are calling us saying, what's up with this? What's the deal with this? Like the deal you're doing on the 24th, the last one we had plumbers calling us saying, is this really legit? And we don't know. We hadn't heard about it. We need to know the providers are getting these calls when they can't get through to the plumbing board. So we need to know ahead of time, and we can be the intermediate to help you guys. But like I said, implementation of these rules and regulations are the real concern. One of those, the training classes. If someone chooses to go to a training class now, will they get their continuing ed hours? That's something we need to spell out, because in the rule proposed, it says that training or continuing ed, training for apprentices, continuing ed for licensees. Well, if the licensee wants to go to a training class, could he get his continuing ed? That's something that would need to be answered. And if the registrant goes to a continuing ed class, would he get his hours rather than training? Or is that still going to be a part of it? Or are we going to eliminate that? Those are again are questions that we need to have answered. Book providers are putting their books together right now that were going to be approved in January. And are they going to be good for the 2 years that we're talking about? And we teach the same book for 2 years, which is what's in one of the proposals? Or are they going to be renew them anytime you want to, get approval whenever? Since the new law says that you got 12 months to get your continuing ed. If we start in January, the first guys in January don't have the 30 days. And so they need 12 months ahead of time. Are the continuing eds that we're doing right now, are they going to count for the next 12 months? These are things that we're trying to teach in class, and we don't have answers to. We're lacking on some of the answers to that. And are some of our other training classes, our med gas, fire sprinkler, WSPS classes, will they count now as continuing ed? Since you've opened the door for other hour-long classes and whatever classes that we get going. And if so, then we need to know how we get those approved, or are they automatically going to be approved? How do we do that? Like I said, the implementation of this is going to be a bit of a problem. We just found out that all of a sudden we're going to be renewing our med gas annually now. And I'm assuming the other endorsements as well will start to renew annually. But for those of us that already renewed ours and it's good through 24, are we going to lose 2 years? Or are we going to still be good for the next 2 years and then start renewing annually? These are all questions that we're getting in class, and we're sitting there saying, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. And I had a guy in class last week. I was talking there, and there were several of these questions coming up, and he raised his hand and said, Mr. Curtin, first time I've ever heard you say, I don't know. And I said, well, I don't. We haven't had this explained to us. It's in the law, but we don't have anything to back it up. And until somebody tells us something, we're sitting there doing nothing. So there's where I have a little bit of a problem with some of this stuff that's going in. And I'm hoping we're going to get some good answers within the next few months anyway. At least, something that would help us to get involved. Another thing that I wanted to mention, last meeting, you made a statement that I'd like to know which classes out here that are being trained, and then who has the highest percent pass rate here in the exam. I'm going to turn that around. I think you need to know who has the low percent pass rate, and then take a field rep and put that field rep out there to monitor those classes and see why those people are not passing. Is that teacher doing any good? Is he not teaching? Why are they out? What are they doing? Those are the classes you need to monitor. And that's where we need to start working on this to get the enforcement and get that pass rate to coming up, is to see which providers has the low pass rate. And let's go monitor those classes and find out why. And then that improves the instruction, that improves the pass rate, that improves our plumbers all the way. So thank y'all for being here today. Appreciate you listening to my comments. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Mr. Curtin. As always, we appreciate your comments and the great job you do for the industry.
Thank you.
Hear a lot of compliments about your classes.
Thank you, sir.
You bet. Don, anyone else?
Yes, Mr. Ron Lord.
Good afternoon, Chairman. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm the political director for the Southwest Pipe Trades, and there's the issue of reciprocity. The discussion around and the board member brought it up about not only do we want folks coming in, but we want the opportunity. Everyone knows construction is cyclical. There's good times, there's bad times. If you remember the 80s, it wasn't good around here, so a lot of folks traveled. And the release of that is to have those agreements so folks can go to other parts if it's slow here. So I would ask if reciprocity is going to be looked at, that not only are we bringing folks in, which right now we do need a lot of folks. We're with retirement, the age of everyone, we do need folks. But have those agreements with those states. I'm actually working with a group of about 7 states, and I'd like to offer to work with the board and with the executive director, see if we could make a connection with these other states that are working, New Mexico, Montana, Idaho, Oregon. There's a lot of states out there that are looking for these resources. So I'd like to offer to work with y'all on that. The other thing, I really did appreciate the chairman's comment during the meeting, talking about being able to go from the tradesman on to a journeyman program, because that was going to be our concern. Is, the legislation in 636 that had the process of having a person go through and get a tradesman's license. The concern was, how do they move on? How do you get that extra? How do you go to a journeyman? And so that wasn't really quite clear, but now that the discussion with the organizations on coming up with a curriculum to move from tradesman to journeyman and hopefully masters, and they own their own business, but that connection, there's still, still need to look at on the job training aspect to it. But it really is a good movement forward to see that we can move those folks from tradesman to journeyman and move them on to a career that really does have a bright end to it. So thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. And we're here to help. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lord, for what you do. And I appreciate the fine training your organizations do throughout the state. Y'all have got a fine training program that really works for a lot of people.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Don, anyone else?
Yes, Mr. Doug McAfee.
How we doing, board? Thank you all for seeing me. This is my first time. The full disclosure, I've got in the trade in '88. Dumbed into it to an ex-wife's uncle. I've been in the trade for 30 plus years. It's been a very good trade to both me and my family. It took almost losing my license in 2019 due to the legislature not passing to get me off my behind and get me motivated to be a part of the system to try to continue on and work and protect our licenses. Hence why I'm here. I had this grandiose scheme of having all this laid down. A lot of people have already taken the wind out of my sails with what they've said. And I had a rough conference call previously, and I apologize. But what I wanted to bring up was a couple of things. First of all, I'm a licensed inspector. I'm also a master. I'm also hold 28 certifications through ICC. I'm currently employed as an inspector, so I kind of see it from all points. I've owned my own business. I've been on all sides of said fence. Also being an inspector and being a part of the trades and construction trades, I deal with TDL&R on the regular. Every week, I get no less than 5 emails from TDL&R regarding proposed board changes, rule changes, meetings, agendas. It's almost spam at this point. True story. But there's a fine line between spam and silence. The one thing I ask, we want interaction from our plumbers in the field. As an instructor, as an educator, I get a lot of feedback from students. And there's a sense of level of frustration from the plumbers in the field. There's a lack of communication. Now, as an instructor, we are the intermediary between the board, the state board, and the field plumbers. But if we could work on that communication to get that information when the board meetings come up, what are the proposed rule changes? We could have more interaction with our board, with what you're asking for, public comment. The only way anybody knows about it is they stumble it on the website or we tell them in class. So the one thing I do ask, y'all are asking for more participation from the plumbers in the field and active contractors. What I'm asking is, can we see about making it more advertised in what we do? Another point I was bringing up, I wanted to say is during the snow apocalypse, we all were important. Between that and the COVIDs, we were all important. The general public doesn't know what we do as plumbers. Has the board considered possibly doing anything regarding a public information or public education campaign? During the snowpocalypse, we released What Does a License Say? And we sent that out and blasted it out a lot. But the general public doesn't know that. I've traveled to other states and they have plumber billboards stating those type of things. Has the board considered a public information campaign along that line to educate? It was in today's meeting today as well, regarding educating the general public. Why do you need to ask for a license? What does that license mean? Have y'all thought about sending that forward and passing that out at all? So I just throwing it out there, since we're doing a lot of changes, we're making a lot of things. There's a lot of blind faith. We're moving some of the things that I feel are important. There's a lot of blind faith on my part that it's going to be adjusted, and we're going to fill in the gaps and plug it in a different way. I'm new to this political process, but I just want to do that, say that. And we were talking about, I don't even know why I wrote this down. Anyway, thank you for your time. Well, I do. We were talking about inspectors enforcing the license and law and code that came up in today's meeting. I understand that, and I agree with it 100%. If you come to my municipality, they all know me, and I will ask for your license every time. No questions asked. Has nothing to do with your work or anything else. However, it's been explained to me by numerous field reps by the state board, they cannot act unless they see the act of plumbing going on illegally. They have to actually see it happen, just like a police officer can't write you a ticket for 10 miles back when you ran the stop sign. He has to actually see you do it. I agree with what you're saying as far as inspectors. It used to be in license law, they had to enforce license and law. Most municipalities no longer enforce that, nor do they write citations. They kick it back to the board. Is that correct? The majority of them do. I can speak to this because I work for one. So that being said, I do agree with that, but maybe making the responsible in municipalities, hold them more responsible regarding that. And that way it'll free up some of y'all's as well. So I want to thank you for your time. Sorry for the verbal word soup, and maybe better next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job. Anyone else?
Yes, Mr. John Mata.
Hello, Mr. Chairman, board members. I want to thank you all for all that you do. I'm John Mata, Director of Field Services for IAPMO, and just want to offer IAPMO's educational service to the board on codes or any educational class that we have. We do provide the online computer-based testing across the country. So anything we can do to help, we're here for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is it. That's it for here in public. Mr. Nguyen had raised his hand, but he took it down. Okay, he's ready. Mr. Matthew Nguyen.
Hey, Mr. Nguyen.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm here. I was just here as a resource today, and I wanted to thank you all for approving our additional instructors. So thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you for coming.
That's all I have.
Dawn, do you have anything you'd like to say?
No, sir.
Okay. Kevin, would you like to say anything since you're up? Thank everyone for coming today. It takes a real trooper to sit through this. A lot of it's pretty boring, I realize, but it's real important to us. And it really means a great deal for us, for you to show up. It means a lot to us. So I guess we're down to no more repeals, but we do need to talk about our next board meeting, as well as meeting agenda items. Next board meeting, have you got some proposed dates? Are you looking in November, first part of November? Are there any festivals or events going on in Austin? When is that? October. Deer hunting is.
Yeah, you're gonna go see.
No, I will. I'm not going to be here the opening week. I'm not going to be here the opening weekend. You're right, but
Yeah, that doesn't take up hotels. The other thing that we have to watch for is what's going on out at Dakota at the racetrack. Because hotels are at a premium. So MotoGP's up now. I think I put it on the list.
is it okay with the board if we do this? We're going to have the meeting sometime in the first 2 weeks of November. I think it's safe to say. And we will check our local events going on and the availability of hotels and such, and then send out a couple of dates for the board's approval. Is that okay with the other members?
Yeah, I
No,
would just
okay with-
request that we be sure and get that on the books sooner rather than later, just so we can all plan for it.
Okay, I will. We will. On recommendation for future board agenda items, Lisa, I guess you've been writing down things that we've been talking about. The one thing that we have not talked about that I want to talk about at our next board meeting as an agenda item, and it relates to a comment that was made today, is Lisa and I have talked about doing a series of meetings across the state, maybe town hall meetings, something where we can call together plumbers. Maybe one or two of us can show up at these meetings, try to schedule as many as we can, and get, if it's difficult for a plumber to come here to us to give their comments, but for one or two of us to maybe go North Texas, West, South, Central, some of the metropolitan areas, try to widely publicize it, maybe make it a town hall type meeting where we can just sit down and listen to what the plumbers want to tell us. They want to fuss at us or pat us on the back, whatever they want to do, but it will give us some direct feedback from the industry that we would like to do. So let's put that on an agenda and do some tentative dates and cities and places that we can talk about. Another something that I want to talk about in that connection, and we've talked about this briefly a few weeks ago, is I would like to do a speakers bureau made up of board members, that if various people we get called upon from time to time to talk about what's going on at the board. For those board members who are interested in doing some public speaking or responding to public events and would be willing to attend those, let us know. And then we'll publicize it to all the organizations. If they would like for one of our board members to come make a presentation to their group, then we would be prepared and help with an agenda of bullet points to cover that we're doing currently. So be thinking about if you'd be willing to participate in something like that. I think if all of us would do a little bit, no one person would have to do a lot. And that would also help us reach out, meet the needs of some of the groups, even the continuing education classes. They may want a board member to show up to answer some questions to help them. So,
Or do their continuing ed there.
yeah. So those are a couple of items that I'd like to discuss and put on our next agenda item. I hope we're going to have a bunch of rules. We've got some follow-up rules that we did not get on this agenda that I'd hoped to, and hopefully by the next meeting, we will have those done. And I will just tell the public, Mr. Curtin and some others who have commented, it is blind faith when you look at all this scrambled egg that we're doing, but I'll promise you there is a method to our madness. Lisa has been diligently working behind the scenes on a lot of things that have got to happen with our computer system before we can put these CE hours and credits in place. But once it starts coming out, it's going to make perfect sense. And we'll do the best we can to lay it out as clearly and concisely as possible as we adopt the rules. So in the meantime, stick with what we're doing. I will say this, I can't speak for the board or the agency, but if you already paid 2 or 3 years of a licensing fee, I wouldn't suspect that we're going to beat you out of it. I would think you'd get credit for it. I don't think you're going to have to pay twice for the same thing. So.
Johnny, I talked to your wife every day.
I tell you what, with that being said, if there's nothing else, we've covered everything on the agenda. Anybody else have anything to say on the board? Meeting adjourned.